Demetrious Johnson confirms retirement, the end of an era. Ladies and gentlemen, the MMA world just lost one of its greatest warriors. Demetrious "Mighty Mouse" Johnson has officially retired from MMA at the age of 38. One of the most dominant champions in UFC history, a pioneer of the flyweight division, and arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, has decided to walk away. And trust me, this isn't just another fighter calling it quits. This is a calculated, well-thought-out decision influenced by some of the biggest legends in the sport. Why did Mighty Mouse retire? Johnson didn't wake up one day and decide he was done. No, this decision came after deep conversations with two absolute icons, Georges St-Pierre and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Think about that for a second. St-Pierre and Khabib, two legends who retired at the top of their game with nothing left to prove, shared their wisdom with Mighty Mouse. They told him one thing that stuck with him. If you're fighting just for money, you're doing it for the wrong reason. And that's when it hit him. Johnson has already cemented his legacy. He's done it all, defended his UFC flyweight belt a record 11 times, pulled off some of the most insane highlights we've ever seen, and even went to one championship where he won another world title. The man has fought at the highest level for over a decade. What else is left? What's next for Demetrious Johnson? Now, just because he's leaving MMA doesn't mean he's disappearing. Mighty Mouse isn't done competing. He's shifting his focus to jiu-jitsu tournaments, which makes perfect sense. His grappling has always been elite, and now he gets to test himself in a different way. And if you're a fan, don't worry, he's not going off the grid. Johnson is doubling down on his YouTube channel, where he's been building an insane following. If you haven't seen his content, he breaks down fights, shares training tips, and gives fans a behind-the-scenes look at his life. Expect a lot more of that now. What this means for the flyweight division. With Mighty Mouse officially retired, it makes you wonder, where does he stand among the greatest of all time? Some say he's the GOAT, and the numbers back it up. But one thing is certain, the flyweight division wouldn't even exist today if it wasn't for him. He carried it on his back when nobody cared, and now it's one of the most exciting divisions in MMA. And speaking of excitement, a massive fight announcement just dropped, and it's one that could change an entire division. Let's get into it. Conor McGregor, is he done? Is the fighting spirit that made him the biggest name in MMA history finally gone? This question is getting louder after McGregor's recent visit to the White House, where he met former US President Donald Trump. But here's the twist, he didn't just meet Trump. He openly expressed political aspirations. Yeah, you heard that right. The same man who once said, "We're not here to take part, we're here to take over," is now talking about a different kind of takeover. And that has left the fight world wondering, does McGregor even care about fighting anymore? Daniel Cormier, a former UFC champion himself, thinks McGregor has lost the fire. And let's be real, McGregor hasn't fought in nearly 4 years. His last fight? A brutal leg injury against Dustin Poirier in 2021. Since then, it's been delay after delay. The comeback fight with Michael Chandler? Canceled due to injury. Fans were hyped, but once again, nothing. So, what's really going on? Let's break it down. McGregor has money, a lot of it. He sold his Properno 12 whiskey brand for $600 million. He's got movie roles, business ventures. Now he's rubbing shoulders with politicians. The hunger to fight? It's just not the same. Think about it, when was the last time McGregor called out a fighter with real fire? The trash talk used to be lethal. Now it feels more like marketing than war. Even Chandler, the guy who was supposed to fight him, has been left in limbo. And Dana White? He's getting frustrated too. McGregor says he'll be back. He even tweeted that he'll fight multiple times in 2024. But here's the problem, talking isn't fighting. Fans have been burned too many times. So let's be real, does Conor McGregor still have a future in the UFC? Or is this the end of the Notorious era? And speaking of big names fading away, another UFC legend might be heading toward retirement too. Let's talk about that next. Joe Rogan skips UFC 315 in Canada, and his reason will shock you. Alright, fight fans, we've got some major news. Joe Rogan is out for UFC 315 in Montreal. That's right, the iconic voice of the UFC, the man who's been cage-side for some of the sport's biggest moments, is skipping this one. But why? Well, Rogan himself just dropped a bombshell. He straight up said he's not attending because of his disagreements with how Canada handled COVID-19 and the country's current political climate. And get this, he even joked that he'd rather go to Russia than Canada right now. Yeah, you heard that right. That's a strong statement, and it's already making waves in the MMA world. Now, Rogan has always been outspoken. He's criticized government policies before, and we know he's no stranger to controversy. But to completely skip a UFC event over it? That's next level. The question is, how will the UFC handle this? Will they replace him with someone else for commentary? And could this mean Rogan is slowly stepping away from the UFC? Because let's not forget, he's been reducing his schedule already. He doesn't travel for international events anymore, and now he's even skipping a North American card. Is this the beginning of the end for Joe Rogan in the UFC? And speaking of UFC 315, there's another huge shakeup happening on this card. One of the biggest fights might be in danger, and fans are not happy. Here's what's going on. Ilia Topuria just made a bold move, and it's a statement to the world. UFC featherweight champion Ilia Topuria is no longer El Matador. Nope. He's officially changed his nickname to La Leyenda, the Legend. And this isn't just some random rebranding. It's a message. A declaration. Why now? Why this change? Well, this happened at the exact moment Spain honored him in a massive way. A whole street in Toledo, Spain, now bears his name. That's right. Ilia Topuria has his own street. That's how big he's become. And let's be real, this isn't just about a nickname switch. This is Topuria cementing his legacy. El Matador was a fighter, but La Leyenda is an icon. He's not just here to win fights. He's here to make history. Think about it, how many fighters in the UFC can say they've had a street named after them in their country? That's reserved for legends, and Topuria is making it clear. He's one of them. But this raises a huge question. What's next? Because if he's calling himself the Legend now, it means he's planning something even bigger. A dominant title reign? A move to lightweight? A super fight? What does this mean for the UFC featherweight division? And speaking of featherweights, there's another champion in combat sports making headlines right now, and this one is shocking. Jon Jones is making moves outside the octagon. Yeah, you heard that right. The most dominant UFC champion of all time is stepping into the world of fight promotion. And guess what? He's not doing it alone. He's teaming up with the king of bare-knuckle violence himself, Mike Perry. This is big. This is the kind of shift that could shake up combat sports forever. So let's break it down. What does this mean for Jon Jones? What does it mean for the UFC? And most importantly, what does it mean for the future of fight fans like you? Look, Jon Jones isn't just any fighter. He's a living legend. A man who has dominated the light heavyweight division for over a decade, came back after a long layoff and immediately became the UFC heavyweight champ. But we all know, Father Time catches up to everyone. Jones is in his mid-30s. Injuries have started piling up. He's hinted that retirement is on the horizon. And now he's planting the seeds for what comes next. Dirty Boxing Championship. That's the name of the promotion. And guess who founded it? Mike Perry. If you know Perry, you know he's a wild man. He went from being a UFC brawler to the face of Bare Knuckle FC. Now he wants to take things even further, and he's bringing in Jon Jones as a co-owner. Let that sink in. The GOAT of MMA and the most violent man in bare knuckle fighting, running a fight promotion together. What is Dirty Boxing Championship? So what is this promotion all about? Well, the name says it all, Dirty Boxing. If you're picturing classic boxing, forget it. This is something different. It's raw, it's brutal, and it's going to be pure, unfiltered chaos. Now, the details are still unfolding, but here's what we know. White heavy checkmark, this isn't just bare knuckle boxing, it's dirty boxing. That means clinch work, close-range striking, and maybe even some Muay Thai elements mixed in. White heavy checkmark, expect a rule set designed for maximum violence. If Perry's running this, you know there won't be any soft fights. White heavy checkmark, Jon Jones being involved. That could mean elite-level fighters, UFC veterans, and maybe even some huge crossover stars. Think about that for a second. What if we see UFC legends stepping into this? What if we get former champions looking for a payday? What if this becomes a rival to Bare Knuckle FC or even the UFC's slap fighting league? This has the potential to be massive. Why Jon Jones is making this move? Now, why is Jon doing this? The obvious answer, money. Look, we've seen this before. Fighters don't want to rely on the UFC forever. Conor McGregor got into whiskey. Khabib started his own MMA promotion. And now Jon Jones? He's getting into the business side of things before retirement. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Jon Jones has had a complicated relationship with the UFC. He's clashed with Dana White. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall fight confirmed. Alright, listen up, this is big. Dana White just dropped a bombshell, and if you're an MMA fan, you're gonna want to hear every second of this. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, it's happening. The UFC heavyweight title unification fight is nearly finalized, and Dana himself is calling it the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history. Let that sink in. Because when Dana White hypes a fight like that, you know it's serious. But here's the real question, why now? Why is Jon Jones finally stepping in with Aspinall, and what does this mean for the division? Let's break it all down. Jon Jones' road to this fight. First off, let's be real, Jon Jones is a name that doesn't need an introduction. The most dominant light heavyweight in history, a man who's beaten a murderer's row of legends, and a fighter who, love him or hate him, has never truly been beaten inside the octagon. When he moved up to heavyweight, there were doubts. Could he handle the size? The power? The pace? Well, he answered that real quick by absolutely dominating Cyril Gane in just over 2 minutes. It wasn't even close. That fight proved one thing: Jon Jones didn't just move up to heavyweight, he was built for it. But then injury. A torn pectoral muscle. Surgery. And suddenly the heavyweight division was in limbo. That's where Tom Aspinall steps in. Tom Aspinall's meteoric rise. Tom Aspinall, this guy is special. If you've been paying attention, you know that Aspinall isn't just a good heavyweight. He's a freak of nature. Lightning fast hands, crazy footwork for a big guy, and a submission game that's terrifying. When Jones went down, Aspinall didn't sit around waiting. He took a short-notice fight against Sergey Pavlovich, one of the scariest knockout artists in the division, and destroyed him in 69 seconds. Let me say that again, 69 seconds. That's not just a win. That's a statement. A message to the division. And more importantly, a message to Jon Jones. Why this fight is so massive. Now, here's where things get real. Dana White calling this the biggest heavyweight fight ever? That's a bold claim, but think about it. Jon Jones, the GOAT, the most dominant fighter the sport has ever seen. Tom Aspinall, the new generation. The guy many believe could be the first real threat to Jones' reign. Undisputed versus interim champion. The winner is the true heavyweight king. But let's be honest, this fight is way bigger than just a title unification. This is about legacy. If Jon Jones wins, his GOAT status becomes untouchable. But if Aspinall pulls it off, we're talking about the moment a new era begins. The biggest question, who wins? So let's get into it. Who actually has the edge? Jon Jones is a master at shutting down his opponent's strengths. He's the smartest fighter we've ever seen, his wrestling is on another level, and his fight IQ is borderline unfair. But he's never fought someone like Tom Aspinall. Aspinall is fast, faster than any heavyweight Jones has ever faced. His striking is crisp and his ground game, sneaky good. If he can keep the fight standing, use his speed, and avoid Jones' wrestling, he's got a real shot at shocking the world. But let's be real, beating Jon Jones is damn near impossible. The guy finds ways to win, every single time. So, is this the moment we see Jones finally lose? Or does he remind the world why he's the greatest to ever do it? One thing's for sure, this fight is going to be insane. And if you thought that was crazy, wait until you hear what Dana White just said about the UFC's next massive fight announcement. Because trust me, you're not ready for this.